is seriously wrong with these two parties? What is it? Hundreds of thousands of kids are pushed into poverty by the two-child cap, and the national debate is still, should we punish poor children even harder? That's the Britain the Tories, and what used to be the Tories and now Reform, have built. And they're proud of it. I mean, let's start with Kemi Badenoch's speech. This isn't a budget response, it's not a serious economic argument, it was basically a political audition tape for Farage's fan club. Her entire message is basically, Labour are weak, Labour won't cut welfare, Labour won't punish families enough. Have a listen to this.
Rachel Reeves is going to put up people's taxes to spend more money on benefits. So far from bringing down the welfare bill, she's going to add another £3.5 billion to it. That's £8.5 billion she's going to have to find next week in taxes. More taxes to pay for more welfare spending. We need to call this out for what it is. Labour are raising taxes to pay for Keir Starmer's weakness on welfare. All this government is delivering is higher taxes and out-of-control spending. Instead of putting up taxes, they should be making savings. They should look at our plan, which we will happily share with them. We have already announced, as many of you know, how we would save £47 billion, including £23 billion from welfare. But they are going in exactly the opposite direction. Ever more spending, ever more welfare. If this Labour government scraps the two-child benefit cap, I want people to know that a future Conservative government will bring it back.
So, in other words, Kemi Badenoch thinks it should be the children that pay for their parents' choices, regardless of what choices or what circumstances that happened. Meanwhile, the actual evidence, the boring stuff like facts, are that the two-child cap affects 1.6 million children. It pushes 300,000 children into poverty, and ending it would lift families up, not sink the economy. But Badenoch doesn't care about that because it's not about economics. It's just Badenoch keeping Reform voters warm, fed and watered. And then, on the other side of the circus tent, you've got Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef. Their press conference was basically Britain is broken, taxes are too high, the NHS is failing, councils are drowning, immigrants out of control, and somehow it's still all the fault of the foreigners.
It is legal migration that is doing enormous damage to the British economy. But just look at the direct link between falls in productivity and the mass importation of unskilled labour. There are enormous costs to our benefit system of those, not just illegally, but legally have come in to our country. And yet we're the ones proposing the most radical cuts to benefits in numerical terms that have ever been seen in the history of this country.
There has been the most extraordinary ballooning of British taxpayer expense being funneled to foreign nationals, including on our own shores, that you could possibly believe. It is foreign nationals who should first bear the brunt before we ask any British citizens to make sacrifices. And that is the fundamental fault line right now in British politics.
Foreign nationals in the NHS, foreign nationals in universal credit, foreign nationals are using maternity services, foreign nationals breathing air, presumably. They even claimed ending welfare for foreign nationals would magically save $6 billion overnight, ignoring the basic things like international law, trade retaliation, and the small detail that many of these workers keep the economy going.
So we have put together a suite of proposals that Rachel Reeves could enact immediately in the budget she's about to announce that would amount to saving and raising £25 billion, more than enough to plug the black hole that she has created through her mad policies and negate the need for tax rises. And in most of the proposals we're announcing, the vast majority of them, it is foreign nationals who are being asked to deal with the difficult decisions. Foreign nationals are taking from universal credit is £8 billion this year. We have assumed a 3-month notice period to be reasonable, and therefore if Rachel Reeves were to enact that policy, that would be £6 billion of savings this year.
But here's the important bit. Both speeches, Tory and Reform, use exactly the same framing. Blame migrants, blame welfare, blame families with more than 2 children, blame anyone except the people who was in charge for the past 20-odd years. And Reform said the quiet part out loud.
Now, I do think we're setting the pace on a number of things. I thought Despite her protestations, I thought a lot of what Shabama Mahmood said yesterday was driven directly by fear that Labour are losing votes, particularly in the Red Wall, to reform. And rhetorically, we would agree with a lot of what the Home Secretary said.
You know what? I actually think they're right. The Tories spent years adopting reform's talking points. Now Labour are drifting towards them too. And yet despite all that, Reform still say Labour are soft. All they seem to want is anger. This is a massive race to the bottom. It's like, who can punish the poor the most? Who can talk down the country the hardest? Who can shout broken Britain the loudest, even though they broke it? The Tories now want to bring the two-child cap back, Reform want to go even further, and both want the debate to be, how hard shall we hit low-income families, instead of why are we pushing children into poverty in one of the richest countries on earth? Meanwhile, the real issues, child poverty, underfunding councils, collapsing services, get buried under immigration soundbites and manufactured outrage. This is a race to the bottom, and right now, it's the only race they seem to be winning.